News in Hamburg, Germany this afternoon cited the G20 summit. A protest that barely got underway turned into a clash with German police. It was the Welcome to Hell protest. Had sort of been billed as the climax leading up to the G20 summit, really getting underway tomorrow, obviously Friday and Saturday there. And about 8,000 protesters believed to be on hand. A small group of them were violent and were wearing masks, which is not allowed in these protests. And that is when things turned into a clash with police. For more of the details, though, we want to bring in Max Hoffman, bureau chief from DW, who joins us via Skype. And Max, I sort of set it up there, but what can you tell us about what this protest was like in the beginning at the protest that it was supposed to be?
You know, in the beginning, we sort of had a festival atmosphere here, Dana, with people celebrating, having a drink, having something to eat, with music. And then the whole thing got underway, and you could tell that there was trouble because you had a small group of usually young men getting all dressed up in black. This is what's called the Black Bloc, and people who follow these protests are very familiar with them, usually prone to violence, and they were at the head of the demonstration. So they moved on across the street that you can see here right in the back. And at some point, the police told them to stop. They had their water cannons set up and the tear gas trucks and all that. And they said they couldn't go on because, like you said, there were masked men in this Black Bloc. So there was a stalemate for 35 minutes where nothing happened. The tension built up. And at some point, violence erupted.
And take us from that point. What happened from that point on where violence erupted?
Well, the first question that everybody here asked was the zero-tolerance policy of the police in Hamburg. Or did they go a step too far and actually incite the violence, or did the violence come from the Black Bloc? We won't know. Probably we will have to analyze the footage. But what happened is that the members of the demonstration scrambled to get out of the street to the right, to the left. There was violence, bottle throwing, tear gas, you know, the whole classic array of what you see in these situations. And what happened now is that the members of the Black Bloc dispersed into the city, and apparently what we're hearing, there are smaller riots across the city with one big window, shop window of a larger bank smashed in, with some injuries as well. But police believes that this area where we're standing here now is safe, and they've also moved on.
And we're seeing now where we've moved away from your camera. We're looking actually at a site where it looks like there are huge numbers of people, huge crowds, and then also some of the police. They're still sort of in some of these areas right now. Any sense of when you'll see all of these crowds disperse, or will this be something the police are dealing with all night?
Well, you have to make the difference between the black bloc I was talking about and the peaceful demonstrators,
right.
Because what usually gets lost in this is that there are people, have legitimate concerns about globalization, capitalism, and all that, and they apparently have continued, although the organizers of the demonstration called the whole thing off. But I believe they continued, and that's what you're seeing. But if everything worked out as the police planned, those are the nonviolent participants of the demonstration.
And you mentioned so many others who are here to protest, be it various leaders or just the idea of globalization. Any sense of what we may see in the next couple of days as well?
This was probably the test for the next days. At least that's what the authorities said. They said if this stays nonviolent, then we have a good chance of not having a whole lot of violence in the next days. It did not stay nonviolent. So what we're expecting, although there are no authorized demonstrations for Friday, is smaller incidents, smaller demonstrations, maybe violence, maybe smaller riots here and there. And then there's a larger demonstration again on Saturday, but with less violent organizations behind it, so maybe with a different outcome than what we've seen today.
And have you heard any, I know you mentioned possibly some injuries. Have we gotten any numbers or heard any numbers of injuries or arrests at this point?
But Dana, no numbers yet. What we've seen, though, are at least 2 or 3 people being transported away very quickly to the hospitals here. We're just going to have to wait for the authorities to give us those numbers later in the day.
Max, earlier we were talking with one of your colleagues who mentioned sort of, was giving us a sense, I guess, of the city and where things are, because these protests are nowhere near where the G20 summit leaders are meeting, correct?
Well, it's not that far away, but of course, the whole area of the actual G20 summit has been cordoned off completely. It's a high security zone. Nobody can get in except with special credentials. The demonstrators normally would have gotten pretty close, but that would have been 6 kilometers away from here, and they didn't even get as far as 1 kilometer. So it is in the heart of the city, but of course, huge security efforts. We have 20,000 police officers of the German police. This is the biggest deployment in the history of German police.
And in talking with some of the protesters out there, give us a sense, because it is a G20 summit, there are several issues and various leaders that obviously people are out to protest. What were some of the names or things that you maybe were hearing more in common?
Dana, we've seen almost as many, different claims as protesters here, as demonstrators: save the dolphins, eat vegan, do something for the migrants. The whole area, because the left is classically very fragmented here, but the common denominator, without a doubt, is anti-globalization, anti-capitalism, and the one figure that managed to unite the left here, without a doubt, is the American president, Donald Trump, because everybody agrees, at least here among the protesters, that they don't like Donald Trump.
And the reasons why, are they varied or one and the same?
I think you could pick any sort of policy, what he's doing with Russia, what he's doing with North Korea, the way he behaves towards women. That's something we've been hearing a lot. I don't think there's one issue they like, to put it quite bluntly.
Well, we certainly appreciate the update there. Max Hoffman, Bureau Chief for DW, with the very latest, where there have been protests going on this afternoon for us, but in the evening there in Hamburg, Germany, in advance of the G20 summit. Max, thank you.
Thanks, Dana.